All right, there we are. Hello, friends. Welcome back. Welcome back. And thank you for being here. Thanks to the American Center, Moscow, for this opportunity for us to be together. For those of you who are new, this is Mindfulness in Daily Life. My name is Busshō Lahn. I'm a mindfulness teacher, among some other things, here in Minnesota in the U.S. And this is our third episode of Mindfulness in Daily Life, and we are trying our best here to kind of synchronize, at least loosely, synchronize our topics at Mindfulness in Daily Life with the Mindfulness Club. And so this time around, we're going to be looking a little bit at movement and resistance. So to get started, let's all just grab our cup of tea. If you got one there, light your candle. If you got one there, take a moment to settle into your seat wherever you are, turn off your phone, and kind of make a decision to choose to pull your energies in, and at least for the next number of minutes we have together, to kind of center yourself best you can. We'll do a really short, just mindfulness of breath and body exercise for just a few minutes here at the top, just to help us transition. And so if you are following the recording in a place that isn't conducive for that, if you're listening to just the audio and you're off wandering around or something, you can leave the exercises, the experientials, for later. But for those of you who are in a safe place and can settle in with me, please take a minute to do that. Let's just for a couple of minutes start by just making a decision, making a conscious choice about where you would like your awareness to be for the next couple minutes. And I always like to ring a bell. And so you can listen to my bell. I'll ring a bell and I'll talk us through a minute or two of this, and then we'll ring a bell again and we'll move on. But I'm grateful to be here with you today. And I hope this time helps you reconnect to your experience of being alive. So let's start. So as we're entering into this time together today, I find it helpful to close my eyes, although you are welcome to leave yours cracked open a bit if you'd like. But I find it helpful to close my eyes, to make a choice to, at least for a few minutes, let go of my normal thinking pattern. I can pick that up again later. And what that means is I'm going to focus as much of my awareness as I can on my immediate felt experience of being in a body. And so that means I like to connect with the parts of me, the parts of my body that I can feel are in contact with the still and steady presence of the earth. And I can usually feel that the most easily through my feet or my seat, depending on what I'm sitting on or sitting in. That might be the chair back, the legs, soles of the feet. I really love how it feels to turn my attention toward those still parts of me that are echoing and resonating the stable earth a stable ground, holding me and my whole life up. That stillness feels really good. It helps me feel safe. It helps me feel supported and known. It's my faithful experience of gravity and the great earth holding me up. And I hold that for a minute, maybe. In my mind's eye, in my awareness eye. And then, as some of you are used to doing, I gently pivot to welcoming in the awareness of the breathing body. Really noticing where in that breathing body I can feel that movement the most easily. And sometimes that's the rise and fall of the belly. If I'm feeling pretty calm, I can welcome my breath all the way down, deep into my body, into the diaphragm or the belly, and I can feel it rise on the in-breath and fall back toward the spine on the out-breath. And sometimes I feel that breath the most easily in the chest, the lungs, the shoulders up here. I can feel that rising and falling a little higher up in my body, the lungs and the chest. I can trust that regular rhythm that knows itself so well. And sometimes it's easiest for me to notice the breath at the nostrils, up at the nose, is where I can feel it most easily sometimes. Cool on the way in. And warm on the way out. As I spend a few minutes doing this, I start to hear the sound of the breath. I notice that changing temperature with the in and the out. I sense more clearly the rhythm that it wants as it starts to slow. And all this starts to feel pretty safe. The faithful tug of the earth on my bones, the stability of my seat, the gentle and faithful movement of the breath. I'm just connecting with the experience of being in a body that right now is safe. Right now it's safe. And I just hold that awareness. Just a few more seconds. All right. So thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that with me. Some of you today, I'm sure, are very familiar with simple exercises like that, mindfulness of body, mindfulness of breath. For some of you, that might be pretty new. But either way, I invite you to kind of be curious and notice, how do I feel right now, just in general, versus how I felt maybe 10, 15 minutes ago? Just to sort of check in. Just to be curious about what maybe 5 minutes of sitting still and just being with a body that's breathing, what effect that has on you. Right? For most of us, generally, we kind of expect our blood pressure to kind of go down a little bit, our sense of being present to be a little enhanced. Even though it was a very short sitting, maybe we even noticed the thoughts slowing just a little bit. Maybe a deeper sense of presence. Maybe not. Maybe not. Just because that's what usually happens with most folks doesn't necessarily mean that'll be our experience every time. Sometimes I've discovered over the years I'm in a kind of a rough spot for some reason. I'm emotional about something or feeling strained or stressed. I'm carrying something that's difficult, and I'm not necessarily aware that I'm doing that. I'm kind of working on something, or I'm agitated about something. Maybe I'm running from something and I don't necessarily know that I am. But being really, really busy kind of keeps it at bay. I'm distracted, right? Which means when I sit, when it's time for my meditation, and I finally rest, those layers of my emotion and that thing that I've been running from kind of gets a chance to show up. My life gets a chance to kind of catch up with me. And there's a beauty in that. Of course, I want that. Of course, that's a good thing. I don't want to spend my life running. But in those circumstances, sometimes those sittings can mean I became more aware. I became more aware, right, of what I was feeling or what I was chasing or something. And so, yeah, it's true. It's a stereotype, but it's a good stereotype and a true stereotype that usually we do feel softer, more present, a little more relaxed when we sit for even a few minutes. But it's also important to normalize and to say, hey, it's not uncommon for mindfulness practice to show us something that was alive in us that we weren't necessarily aware was there. And that's okay. In fact, it's beautiful. What we're highlighting there is the relational piece. Right? Mindfulness of breath means my awareness is in relationship with breathing. In curious, affectionate relationship. Right? Mindfulness of body means there's a relationship between my awareness and the body. I get to pull the experience of having a body into the front. It's not in the background the way it normally is. I'm making a choice to pull it forward. And that's kind of what mindfulness is, right? It's just making a choice about what I want to pull into the foreground. Just like taking a picture. The subject is here and whatever's in the background is back here. Right? And so for most of us, things like having a body and breathing are in the background. And what's in the foreground is the drama or the email I'm writing or the conversation I'm having. That's beautiful. That's fine. But that's what makes mindfulness practice so special, is it gives us time away from our normal operating system where the thoughts and the impulses and the behaviors are center stage, and gives us a chance to pull something really primary about being alive into the foreground. To give it a place, to really experience it more deeply. And that very simple exercise that you just did with me, that we all did together, gave us all a chance to kind of remember, there's sort of a very familiar tug that I'm very used to called gravity. And because I'm never without it, it's very easy to not notice, but it's a very familiar sensation to me. And the experience of breathing, it's very faithful. That next breath always arrives right on time, doesn't it? There it is. There's that stable ground right under my feet. Wow, there it is. Right? Simple, simple, but that doesn't mean the practice of paying attention to it deeply is easy, always. And because it's simple, it doesn't also mean that paying attention to it the way we are today isn't profound. It has a great profound potential for us when we can be curious about our lives in a kind and wanting to connect kind of way. Possibilities open that wouldn't open otherwise. So thank you for doing that with me. It matters. So today, we're doing movement and resistance. That's what my notes say. That's wonderful. We know, even if we're pretty new, that the word mindfulness is usually described or usually defined as awareness that doesn't have judgment. Mindful awareness doesn't have an agenda. It usually doesn't divide things. It usually doesn't need to label. It doesn't need to judge. It doesn't need to assign value. It's much more open. Mindful awareness doesn't need anything to change. It's just aware. It's just aware. Just aware, right? It's a capacity that you have, we all have. It's a fundamental capacity. Fundamental meaning it's built in. And the much more exercised function that we usually have in the foreground is a perception filter based on our experience and based on our desires and based on our opinions and based on our conditioning, right? There's nothing wrong with that. It's really important. That type of ego functioning, very, very important. But we're starting today by just reminding ourselves that mindful awareness is just sort of sunlight on the field. It just shines. That's it. It just shines. It isn't picking or choosing or wanting or pushing away, right? Everything else takes care of itself. We're just shining. It's very gentle. It's very soft. It's very steady. And so as we move into our topic this week, movement and resistance, we're wanting to be curious about those two things. I want to be aware of, mindful of, curious about, connected to movement in the body and in the mind, meaning thoughts and emotions, and also resistance. I want to call those things into the foreground. Like, what is movement? Well, why don't I pay attention to that the way that I just did to my breathing, the way I just did to my body? How is paying attention in my body different when that body is moving versus when that body is sitting more still? Again, sounds very simple. It is simple. It isn't complex. But the experience of being mindful in a body that's moving, for obvious reasons, there's a lot more going on. So for a lot of us, it's much more challenging just because there's more sensory input. Right? That makes sense, right? To be mindful of a body that's sitting still and to be mindful of a body that's moving, walking, climbing, running, jumping, cutting carrots to make a soup. It doesn't matter what it is. You can understand, like, oh, there's a lot more going on. The field of vision is different. The eyes are open. Something is moving. Something's happening. There's space to negotiate. There's balance to negotiate. Woof. Being in a moving body, there's a lot going on. Right? So we pay attention, but there's a lot more to pay attention to, right, around movement. Now, I said a lot of us find being mindful in movement much more challenging, and that kind of makes sense. But what's also true, and I'm always surprised by this, how many folks find mindfulness in a body that's moving actually easier than mindfulness of a body that's sitting? For exactly the same reason. There's more going on. There's more sensory input to ground their awareness in. There's just more happening. There's more to pay attention to in a moving body. And so there's more to keep them grounded in the present moment. Whereas trying to pay attention to a body that's just sitting and not moving is actually kind of unusual for us. We don't spend a lot of time doing that. And you can kind of imagine why, after even a few minutes of trying to pay attention to a still body, the presence of all the emotions and the presence of all the thinking and all the planning and stuff would end up moving to the forefront. There's just more space for it, right? I hope that makes sense. It kind of does to me. So some of us experience mindfulness in movement more easily. Some of us experience mindfulness in movement more challenging. Either way, no problem. You're in good company, because lots of folks experience both. And for each individual practitioner, that can change. Sometimes one is easier, sometimes the other is easier, right? So today we are talking about physical exercise very, very briefly. And because movement and resistance has an external physical expression, right? We go to the gym, we go for our walks, we go for our runs, we climb the rocks, we walk the dog, we move the body, right? Yeah. But we're also talking about our relationship with movement and resistance from inside. So we're going to touch on both. I'll do my best. All right. So I want to start by noticing the way we all notice how it feels to be in a moving body. When we're done with a good workout, we know how that feels. Right? There's something that happened there. Right? Endorphins got released and dopamine is happening, and the body feels warm and it feels softer and it feels probably a different kind of tired than we're used to. And there's something really, really life affirming about being in a body that's just recently exercised. Right? This ties in with last month. It's nourishing. It's tiring, hard, but can you feel the deeper parts of you go, yes, it actually feels good to experience the strength of this vehicle, the body vehicle, right? The flexibility of the body vehicle. It feels good to notice that. It feels good to notice the balance of the body vehicle. It feels good to notice the footfalls. It feels good to lift the object. It feels good. There's actually a very subtle, there's a very subtle sensation of, I guess I'll say pleasure. I guess I'll say pleasure. That seems like an imperfect word, but I'll use it. There's a very subtle feeling of pleasure to be inhabiting a body that's operating as it should. And it's so subtle, we don't normally notice it. It's actually there all the time. But right now, I'm making a gesture with my hand. Part of how I experience, like, see, there's a thread that's working underneath my experience. And so I'm drawing a thread shape with my hand. And I notice when I'm telling my hand, can you please make a little wavy motion for me? And it does. This is functioning the way it should. I'm asking my hand to do this thing, and it is. In other words, it's working. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to. There's a very subtle feeling of pleasure there. That's how it's supposed to work. And when we get very, very still, when our mindfulness practice becomes really rooted, when we really practice this every day, we start to become aware of these more subtle movements. It really does feel good to ask your body to walk, and it walks. You ask your body to go to the gym and lift the weight, and it does. You can feel there's just something self-supportive. There's something self-fulfilling about that activity. I'm only bringing that up right now because the resistance part, the movement and the resistance part usually arrive together. And the resistance part for all of us is universal. We all have it. It makes sense it's there, so we don't have to try to get rid of it. We don't have to fight against it. We just have to understand, oh yeah, you're built in, I get it. Because resistance is built into our experience of being alive in form. And the simplest example of that is gravity. Literally for me to do this, to lift my hand 1 foot, I am working against gravity. My body's registering resistance. It's so slight I don't notice it, but it's there. It's there. So resistance is Just like movement is, it has an emotional component, it has a mental component, it has a physical component, there's an impulse component. Wow, there's a lot going on. There's a lot going on. So here's what we're going to do. Because we're meeting each other virtually via screens, we can't all do this physical activity together, right? In other words, I can't do it because if I stand up and move, I'll be off camera and you won't be able to see me or hear me. Won't work. You, on the other hand, are welcome, if you can, to do this physically as we talk today, or just remember this part of the recording, listen to it later when you are able to move. But I want to describe very, very briefly the practice of walking meditation. It's really important. It's profound. It's simple. It's beautiful. But it incorporates movement and it incorporates resistance, both in gentle, subtle ways, right? But I don't know. I don't want to use my time today to encourage you all to go get your exercise and go to the gym because you already know that. You already know that. It does feel good after you've taken your big walk. It feels good. It feels good to lift things. It feels good to celebrate the strength of the body. It feels good to celebrate the resilience of having the body. Yes, it feels good. So we'll be a little more specific to our mindfulness practice today. Walking meditation is something that most mindfulness practitioners know exists. Most meditation practitioners know exists. They usually know that it's just as ancient and just as honorable, just as effective, just as beautiful as sitting meditation. But folks who are newer to both mindfulness and meditation don't always know, because the sitting form is the one we all see. It's the one we hear about. It's the one we associate the most strongly with mindfulness practice, sitting meditation. The person meditating is sitting. Yeah, we get that, right? So walking meditation is something that's not necessarily known to us until we've been doing this a while. And then what happens is something you've probably already figured out, which is paying attention to a still body is fundamentally the same to paying attention in a body that's moving. The attention paying part is the same. The thing that's happening is different. Just like when I pay attention to the contact with me and the earth, and then I switch to paying attention to the sensations of breathing. Whoa, those are really different. But the way that I am paying attention, the same. It's open, curious, gentle, still, spacious. Like, oh, there it is. There it is, right? So I'm going to describe walking meditation to you. This is done a number of different ways, and of course you can find information about this on the internet. It's all over the place. There's faster forms and slower forms, and forms where you follow a pattern like a labyrinth. It's beautiful. Walking a labyrinth is a beautiful form of walking meditation. For some folks like myself who live in a small space, I can do this up and down the hallway between the bedroom and the living room, you know. Or you can do it outside, of course. You can do it inside, of course. The details are a little less important than the actual practice. So I'm going to talk just for a few minutes about it. So please imagine with me, and if you're able to do this as we talk, please do. But for those of us who are needing to stay seated, just imagine with me standing up and feeling those feet planted firmly on the ground. And what we're going to do is mindfulness of body, which we are all experts at. But this time the body is in a different posture. It's in a standing posture. So my only contact points with the earth are the soles of my feet, and I can feel how still that earth is under the soles of my feet. And so I'm going to take a minute, if I'm going to do walking meditation, to notice that stillness. And I'm going to make a choice, like I always do about my posture, how I want to balance my bones, lift my heart, drop my shoulders gently, soften my face, I'm closing my eyes instinctively, as you can see. I'm going to check in with my breath. Oh, there you are. Feeling that in the body. There, I'm feeling a little more present now. Now, because I'm going to walk, I have to leave my eyes open. So I'm going to crack those open and cast my gaze down gently. And as I inhale, I'm going to lift my right foot and I'm going to put it down. And you can see here, as I'm doing this, I'm putting, my hands get to be my feet for the next few minutes. I'm putting this foot about this far in front of the other one. 1 foot length is about how small my steps are going to be. You can make a choice to make these bigger if you wish, or smaller if you wish. Depends on your balance and where you are and what you're standing on. But generally, the steps are quite small. So I'm going to take a breath in and go, and on my exhale, I'm going to put that down like that. And then on my next inhalation, I'm going to lift that left foot. And on the next exhalation, I'm going to place it. And then inhale, lift on the right. On the exhale, put it down. Inhale up. Exhale down. At your own rhythm, inhale up. Exhale down. Inhale up. Exhale down. So when I am newer to this kind of meditation, one of the things that strikes me immediately is I'm only synchronizing the steps with the breath to kind of help. So I start to do that movement automatically. The breath and the step just happen at the same time. You don't have to, but it just simplifies the process. Right? And so obviously the rate of my breath is determining the speed with which I put the feet down, right? And all I get agency over to choose, the breath chooses that for me then, right? I don't have to think about it. The breath chooses the pace. All I have to make a decision about is how big or how small I want those steps. And it actually doesn't matter. As you can imagine, the point of walking meditation isn't to arrive at a place. The point is to experience mindful presence inside a body that's moving. Because it is the exact same practice. But boy, if I'm new, I notice immediately my eyes are open. And so I have a field of vision that's taking in a lot of information. I can see what's in front of me. Right? And as I move, that field of vision changes. Yeah, that's cool. That's good. That's fine. But there's a lot of information. So again, some folks are going to find that very distracting because I've probably got a story or an opinion or a judgment or an agenda for all sorts of the stuff I see, right? Depending on where I am and what I see. And for other folks, it's so much easier to stay present because there's so much information coming in that keeps them grounded in the present, right? They're probably not thinking about, oh, what I'm going to do on Friday night's dinner party and who I want to invite because I've got so much happening here. The other thing we start to know, that makes sense, right? Yeah, totally. The eyes are open. Wow. The other thing we start noticing is balance. Like I have to choose how to put my feet. And it becomes really automatic after a while. I get very used to the muscle memory of walking meditation. But when I go really slowly this way, it changes my experience of balance really profoundly, right? I don't have the momentum that I do when I'm normally walking at a normal pace. Helps keep me upright, right? It's like riding a bike. When you're going fast, it's easy to balance. When you go super slow or even still, it's hard. So I start noticing, oh, I've got to pay attention to my balance in a different way. Wow, right? So walking meditation, again, we're just kind of skating along the surface here, but walking meditation is done very, very, very frequently, very commonly, almost universally at mindfulness centers or meditation centers where they teach meditation. It's usually taught in concert with or along with sitting meditation. And the practical reasons are sitting is wonderful and it lends itself to meditation really well. But after a little while, the body wants to kind of stand up and stretch and move. That's just what our bodies like to do, you know. And so after however long, a half an hour or so, it's like, yeah, it's good to then stand up and maybe do 10 minutes of walking before you want to sit back down again, you know. It's really, really good. So I'm encouraging all of you, really encourage, please give walking meditation a shot. It's, again, simple, but quantitatively, subjectively, a very different experience. And I'm offering it today because obviously our theme is movement and resistance. But for some folks, this is the door in. I've heard this so many times over the years that sitting meditation, sitting mindfulness was so challenging for somebody. And then they were introduced to walking, and oh my God, it was revelatory. That just worked for them. It made so much more sense. They found it so much more supportive. And then they did that, and that became their doorway to be able to do sitting meditation. Really, really powerful. Yeah, so please give that a try. Even 10 minutes or so is enough to really give yourself a good taste. We're going to do one more little exercise here, please, and then we'll shift gears and we'll have time, I hope, for some questions, because I know some of you are probably in the chat typing in some questions and comments, and I really want to get to that today. That's really important. This is an exercise that my teacher gave me many years ago. The fancy science word, if you like fancy science words, which I normally don't, but today's fancy science word is interoceptive. It's spelled interoceptive. I'll do that again. Interoceptive. interoceptive. It means awareness from the inside out. So here's what we're going to do. This will just take a couple of minutes. We're going to start by holding up our left hand. You can just do this with me. And just spend a minute looking at it. Pretty common mindfulness exercise. Hey, pay attention to an everyday object that you see all the time, but slow everything else in your life down and give your full attention to this object and look at it very, very deeply. We do this with the tangerine or with the raisin during the eating exercise, or we do this with, today, our hand. We can do it with any object we want. Today we're going to do it with a part of our body. It's just a way of being really, really deeply present to something. So as you're looking at your hand, start by noticing the obvious, the color of the skin, the changes in the color of the skin and the different areas of the hand. The places where the skin folds, right, or wrinkles between knuckles or fingers. If you have any scars, any marks, the fingernails, the length of the fingers in relation to one another. If you flip your hand over, the size of the palm, the pattern of lines, just noticing these things. We just notice. Can you see how you're kind of touching your hand with your eyes? Just touching it with your eyes, just noticing it in kind of a curious, friendly way. So now just rest your hand, please, for just a moment. Lay it back down on your lap there or wherever. And close your eyes with me. We'll close our eyes together. if it's safe to do so. And now with your eyes closed, raise your hand again, that same left hand. Notice how it feels to move the fingers from the inside. You can extend into an open hand. You can constrict a little to form a fist. Open back up again. Feel the fingers that touch each other, the ones that don't. Notice how if you leave your hand extended in just a wide open posture, how you can choose to pay attention to just the thumb, to put all the awareness in the thumb. And then you can make a different choice. I want to notice just the pinky. And all the awareness goes to the pinky. And again, as you return movement to that hand, all of the sensations that you make choices about including and sensations that fall into the background. Right? So you can open your eyes again and lower your hand. Part of what we're doing there, I wish we had more time for this. It's very cool. But part of what we're doing there is realizing, even with my eyes closed, I get to choose. I want all my awareness to go here. I want all my awareness to go here, and it does. Just like earlier today, you chose, I want my awareness to go toward the places in me that are touching the earth through my seat. Now I want my awareness to go toward the sensations of breathing as I notice them in my belly. And now I want my awareness to go toward me experiencing my breathing, but in my shoulders and in my neck. And then I want to move it to the nostrils. Wow. Right? So part of what we're talking about here when we're experiencing movement is we are aware of the movement of the sensations of a body as it feels gravity, as it lifts a weight, as it feels the wind as you're running, or the sweat on our brow, right? There's a very kind of large, dense experience of being in a body where muscles are flexing and sounds are happening and field of vision is changing, right? Wow. Because we experience that as movement, and we can see the resistance components of that, how I'm working against gravity or I'm working against the weight, right? That's the thing I'm working against it. And we could also feel it as mindfulness practitioners from the inside. I can also notice how my awareness, my mindfulness, can inhabit that moving body in different places. You know, when I'm running, I can pay attention to my footfalls or my arm movements. I can concentrate on the gravity, the sound of the wind, the field of vision, where my breath is in my body. Wow, I make choices about how I want to inhabit that. And finally, and again, I wish we had more time, but that's okay. I like to be curious about where emotional resistance shows up. I know the theme is on a physical level. We're looking at, exercise, right? Movement and resistance. But it's also really important as mindfulness practitioners to understand that mindful awareness really is just like the sunlight. It is just a light. That's why they always use that as their metaphor. Just shine the light of awareness on something. And so resistance are the places where I create a shadow. There's something there that I don't want to see, or a feeling I don't want to feel, a thought I don't want to have, a sensation I don't want to experience. Does that make sense? This is not a bad thing. There's nothing here to judge, right? But it makes sense when it's really, really cold outside that I want to rush inside. I'm trying to move toward an experience of warm and move away from an experience of cold. I'm wanting to move toward something that's more comfortable because I can feel the resistance in my body to an experience that's less comfortable. Of course, this is just normal human functioning. Can you feel it? We're not judging anything that we're seeing here. We're not pathologizing a problem. But as a mindfulness practitioner, I do want to be aware of the sensations of the body, but also the emotional states and the mental states that I will habitually avoid, that I will have resistance to, and why. So I'm a little more curious. Why is it, I wonder? I wonder what that's about for me. Right? Can you sort of hear how that might tie in with last month's nourishing? Like, what is nourishing for me? Why do I avoid this type of an experience? It's not bad to avoid. It's not bad to not avoid. We're not making a judgment of that yet. But for those of us who really wrestle with physical exercise, I really don't like it. I avoid the gym. I know I should go, but I don't. Yeah, I can have it as a long-term goal. I want to spend more time in my body. I want to end up celebrating my strength. I want to celebrate the power of being in a moving body that's working the way it should be. Wow. So connecting to the joy of that makes sense. But I also really want to pay attention to what's the resistance about, I wonder. I just don't want to always imagine the resistance as an enemy that I'm there to defeat or overpower. I want to, from the inside, just like with the hand exercise, I want to understand what the resistance is about from the inside. What are you there for me to do? What is that resistance trying to do for me? I wonder what. Because I know I'm big and strong. I can be with being cold for a few minutes. I'm big and strong. I can be in a body that's feeling hot and breathing heavily as I run. That's okay. It doesn't have to be comfortable, but there can also be an okayness around it. And so I just want to start by being curious. I just want to start by being curious. And so movement can show us places of resistance physically, but it can also show us places of resistance emotionally. And both walking meditation and interoceptive awareness to experience resistance from the inside can help give us really important clues. So to wrap up here, one of the things that I used to that I really like doing, and I used to do it a lot when I had lots of in-person classes. Every week at the end of class, have people choose. Here's an object in my life, an object and an activity, a movement with an object and an activity in my life that I'm going to choose as one of my mindfulness practices this week. I'll do my sitting practice. But in addition, I'm going to be careful of my shoes. Every time I put on my shoes, every time I take off my shoes, I'm going to do that slowly and carefully. That's the one I'm going to choose. Or keys, car keys, or house keys. We all have a key ring, right? The one I'm going to choose this week is the keys. When I pick them up carefully and quickly, they make a jingle jingle. It's like a bell. I'm going to pay attention to my keys this week. Every time I pick them up, I'm going to go, wait, where's my body? Where's my breath? I'm in movement right now. And I want, by the end of the week, to be very, very intimate with the sound this object makes, how much it weighs, all of its textures, my posture, my teacup, my favorite teacup. Every time I pick it up, I'm going to go, where's my body? Where's my breath? I am moving. I can feel the weight of the full teacup, how it changes over the course of the hour as it becomes lighter and lighter and lighter, right? Mindfulness of my phone when I pick up my phone, my phone, right? Whatever it is, whatever the action is, it ends up then being kind of it's a mindfulness bell. It's just some part of your life that I've assigned this week, some movement that will show me, hey, you're interacting with your life. Pay attention. It becomes a bell. And I encourage you to do the same thing. We usually resist doing that. I don't want to pay attention to my shoes. I don't want to pay attention to my car keys. I don't want to pay attention to my teacup. We resist it. And then we become curious why. So do that. Please encourage yourself to include movement into your mindfulness practice. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful way of extending the practice into the greater arena of your life, That way your mindfulness practice isn't married and trapped in just the cushion, in just that half an hour, and just that one posture, that it becomes much more of a way of life. That's our goal. That's what we're hoping for. Okay. Next month is our fourth in the series of Mindfulness in Daily Life. And next month, we are talking about exploring mental health and stress. So please join us for that. But we still have 10 minutes left, which is what I was hoping for, to look at some of the comments and questions that you good folks are writing in for us. And I've got Sensei Busshō is back. Oh, heavens. Thank you. I'm glad. I'm glad that you're here. You're back too. And then we have a wonderful question here. How can we tell when we are resisting something versus simply making a choice? Ooh, what a great question. What a great question. There's probably a wonderful talk in that question, but I think in the interest of time, what we become curious about is the constriction. If I'm resisting something, I'm going to notice a constriction. Fear, for example, is an emotion that comes with a constriction. We notice the constriction in our body because our lungs tend to constrict, the shoulders tend to tighten, the jaw tends to tighten. So if I'm resisting something, I'm going to notice a constriction. It might be mental. I might notice the way my brain works stops being flowing and curious and creative and starts being very rigid and starts moving faster and starts being very kind of, you all understand what it's like to have thoughts that are like, maybe I notice the constriction there or the resistance there. I oftentimes notice it in the body. The body will always show me when I'm resisting something. The more connected I am to this knowing vehicle, the more quickly I'm going to pick up on that information. Certainly constriction in the emotions. Certainly constriction in the emotions I start to notice. If I'm making a choice, I've got to do this or I've got to do this. If I can feel my emotions shift when I imagine doing this, and my emotions shift when I imagine doing this, it gives me a sense of what part of me is resisting one and already wanting the other. Right? So what you're not hearing me say is, this is the thing not to do, and this is the thing to do. And you're certainly not hearing me say the opposite. This is the thing not to do because I don't wanna. And this is the thing to do because I do wanna. We're not going there. We're just realizing, hey, I'm going to notice some part of me goes, and it's going to give me a clue. And I want to be curious about the constriction, whether it's mental or emotional or physical. If my immediate impulse is to do one thing over another, cool, fine. But as a mindfulness practitioner, I'm going to be just as curious about where my impulse wants to go as where my impulse doesn't want to go, just because it's good information. Right? And it's probably going to tell me something about where I've been and what's happened to me in my life. I hope that's a good answer. I hope that's a good clue. That's a great question. What's the point of the meditation process in general? I'm new here and I'm interested in more materialistic aspects of its known influence on brain and body. Great question. I won't try to sum it all up because there's so much on the internet that you can so easily find benefits of a regular meditation practice. Really, that's like super easy to find. So you'll find long lists. Generally speaking, they said like increased attention span, ability to focus, ability to see more vivid experience of being alive, mental clarity, emotional stability, and all that's true. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. A little more, maybe a little closer to my heart is I really want to experience being alive. The experience of being alive is incredibly nuanced. It's beautiful. It's incredibly nuanced. And it's painful. And it's incredibly nuanced. And it's complex. And it's incredibly nuanced. And the more present I am to it, the richer the experience of being alive is. And I absolutely believe in its capacity to expand compassion and to help people see clearly, wisdom. compassion and wisdom. That's really where the money is for me. But that's a beautiful question, and there's loads of answers, and it does all of the above. So whatever your entry point is, whatever the thing is you're looking for, okay. When life gets overwhelming, do you recommend moving more or moving less? And how do you know which one you need? Oh, it's such a good question. You guys are asking such great questions. These are great questions. You're going to know the answer to that. You are going to have an intuition around that one. You're going to have an intuitive sense. This is kind of what we just got through talking about is, ooh, am I feeling trapped? Am I feeling stuck? Do things feel really heavy? I might want to move. It would make sense that movement would be a good medicine for feeling trapped and heavy and stuck. And it also might make sense that the opposite is true. If I'm feeling flooded and scattered and frantic, maybe I need to sit still and really hold that feeling for a little while. Maybe. Can you feel kind of just the intuitive nature of, oh, what would the medicine be for this condition? And oftentimes everything I just said would be reversed. So I'm not doing a very good job of answering your question. But what I do trust, and I absolutely do trust this, is the more time I spend in movement as medicine, the more time I spend doing movement as medicine. I'm going to go run. I'm going to go walk. I'm going to go do 15 jumping jacks and see how that feels. To see what it does to my body, yeah, but to see what it does to my emotions, to see what it does to my mind. I'm going to do that. I'm going to be really familiar with that so that I have a better sense when I do experience affliction and I'm having a really, really rough time. I have a better sense of what the medicines are in my medicine cabinet. Is this one asking me for stillness? Is this one asking me for some movement? Maybe a little bit of both. But can you kind of feel it? When I start realizing both of those categories, movement and stillness, are beautiful medicine. They're both wonderful. We need them both. The more time I spend doing both with the intention of them being nourishing medicine, the more familiar I am with what they do. And so I'm going to have a much better sense of what I need there. Yeah, such a great question. And then the last one we'll have time for is, can you be mindful while doing intense exercise like lifting, running, or does it always have to be slow and gentle? Thank you again. This is a great, great question. Short answer is, of course you can. Absolutely. The speed at which you are doing something in no way precludes your being present to it. You probably intuited that when you were asking the question. It does not always have to be in slow and gentle. And generally, the reason we associate mindful with slow and gentle is usually for most of us, it's easier to learn when we're doing it slow and gentle. It's just easier to kind of get the muscle of mindfulness stronger. So we go, oh yeah, if I force myself to do a 2-minute activity like making a sandwich, I can do that in 2 minutes. If I force myself, you understand what I mean. I'm going to make this a practice. I'm going to invite this to take 10 minutes. So I do everything very slowly. I'm going to become a much stronger mindfulness practitioner because I'm going to notice the resistance I have to going slow. I'm going to notice the power of the autopilot, and I'm going to be able to see, oh, there's other ways of doing things. There's other ways. But absolutely, I can be fully present doing something that's very, very intense and very engaged. In fact, athletes talk about this a lot, and they call it flow. They call it a flow state. You've probably heard of that, right? So it doesn't have to be slow and gentle, but for most of us, that's how we practice, and that's how we get better at doing it. Yeah. So again, play with it. Play with it. Yeah. Try to just be really present to doing something really busy. Sort of see how it shows up for you. My friends, I'll let you go because we're out of time, but thank you. Thank you for your practice. Thank you for your questions. I so love the opportunity to do this with all of you. And we'll see you next month for mindfulness of mental health and stress. And I very much hope to see you there. So peaceful travels between now and then. Bye-bye.